Sorry about that. So yeah, I'll go over this again. So basically, what is a VPN? A VPN is a virtual private network. And the definition is basically any technology that can encapsulate and transmit network data, typically internet protocol data or IP data over another network. Usually, as I said again, it's used to provide access to network resources that are behind things like firewalls, usually for like employees to access work resources. And then a lot of times the VPN is thought of just of like a proxy service that uses VPN technology, such as OpenVPN, as opposed to like the actual definition, which includes higher level protocol such as SOCKS proxies. So there are two main categories to VPNs. There is the remote access and site-to-site. Remote access is what most of us have experience with. It's what we use to connect to like our school network or to other company networks. But there's also a different category called site-to-site, which actually bridges two networks together. Most of the time, companies will use these to tie together various networks over all over the world. But typically, we won't, like consumers and everyday users don't really interact with site-to-site VPNs. Now, an important thing about VPNs is that they cannot make online connections completely anonymous, but they can usually increase privacy and security. This is because VPNs are basically just a tunnel between two different networks. Usually these tunnels are encrypted, and that in that way they can provide security. But they cannot actually make you completely anonymous, just in the fact that they are a tunnel and they know like the end user and all that. So some common protocols that VPN uses are IPsec, SSL, TLS, SSTP, SSH, WireGuard. You may have heard of a few of them. IPsec is I guess the standard protocol that many VPN services use. SSL, TLS, you experience that every day. This is used in like websites. SSH, if you've ever worked with any Linux machines, this is actually a form this is actually a VPN protocol. And then WireGuard is a new and upcoming protocol that is very promising, and we'll actually be using this in our own VPN. Now, a couple things about VPN services. I'll just let you know my stance is that most VPN services are not that good. Yeah, I'll just dive into it. So many providers simply provide basically just a proxy that utilizes VPN technology such as OpenVPN or WireGuard. So yeah, basically they just provide a tunnel from your computer where it proxies all the internet traffic and then tunnels it to their own servers, and then all your traffic just goes out from there. Yeah, so basically, I like this quote. The only secure VPN is where the participants have oversight of both ends of the entire data path, or when the content is encrypted before it enters the tunnel. This is really the only secure VPN where you know both ends of that tunnel. For VPN service providers, you don't know what's happening on their end. They can be monitoring your data, selling that, whatever. And also, the important part about encryption is that the actual tunnel itself is encrypted, but everything else that leaves that tunnel right after, it doesn't matter. It's for example, if you have plain text like plain text data that goes into your VPN tunnel, the data will be encrypted when it goes through that tunnel, but once it leaves it, it's just returning to plain text, and whoever's on the other side can just read that data. Additionally, paid for VPNs can be pretty insecure. They share keys, which is pretty bad on a cryptographic standpoint. And they also require you to trust their operators. And a lot of times these VPNs are kind of shady because of regulatory and standards and all that. So even if you're not doing anything wrong, you can also be sharing the same endpoint with someone who is. So yeah, you're never sure about like who's also accessing that same endpoint with you. If you do have the time, I'd recommend reading these two short posts about pretty much summarizing why commercial VPN services are pretty terrible. The first one deals with some like a lot of common VPN providers using pretty weak shared keys. And the second one gives more detailed breakdown about the different aspects about why VPNs, commercial VPNs should be avoided in general. Important thing to think about is your threat model. This is pretty important when it comes to thinking about like what VPN to use. So basically, there are roughly two cases where you might want to use a VPN. You're on a hostile network and you want to work around that, such as like a coffee shop or public airport Wi-Fi access. The second thing is you want to hide your IP from a very specific set of adversaries, such as like circumventing ban or anti-piracy scare letters, those type of things. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say about VPN services. Again, if you do want to read more, I'd recommend just going to these links and just reading more about them. Before I actually go into the actual building of our own VPN, if you do want to follow along with me when I do deploy our VPN service, I recommend creating an account on one of the cloud providers listed here. If you use these referral links, I think you do get some free credits. And I can also put it in the chat. Sorry. Okay, so that first link is for DigitalOcean, I believe. The second one is for Linode. So if you do sign up there, I think you do get some free credits or something. The third one is just the Amazon free tier. So if you didn't know, actually, I'll just go to that now. Amazon does have a free tier. The thing we'll be using primarily is this Amazon EC2. We get 750 hours per month, which is basically enough to run the T2 microservice constantly every month. So if you do sign up for the free tier, you get the service for 1 year free. So yeah, so just go ahead and sign up on that if you don't have an account already. And I'll just go into what we're going to be using. So basically, if we wanted to build our own VPN, it'd be pretty hard because usually a VPN consists of a server, which hosts the VPN software which you're going to connect to, which is usually hosted on a Linux server. And then actually building this Linux server can be pretty daunting because there's a lot of security involved in the actual OS security, as well as configuring the actual VPN software itself. WireGuard is actually pretty easy. You can actually do it pretty quickly on your own, but other protocols such as IPsec, it's actually pretty hard to deploy. There's you have to know a lot about it. So fortunately for us, guys over at Trail of Bits have a project called Algo Vpn. It's basically a set of scripts which will automatically deploy a VPN server to whatever cloud provider you specify. And it'll set it up for you. It'll create all the profiles and credentials for you automatically. So it's a pretty useful application. And yeah, definitely if you want to read more about it, the GitHub is listed right there. So some of the protocols that Algo VPN supports are WireGuard IPsec and SSH tunneling. So again, as I said before, WireGuard is the new and upcoming protocol. It was actually merged into the Linux kernel a few months ago. So this is a pretty fast protocol, and it's looking to be like the next generation protocol for VPN usages. IPsec is the old standard. Algo Vpn uses something called Strong Swan to implement this, and also there's just the default or the regular SSH tunneling that you can enable as well. So some of the cloud providers that Algo Vpn supports include DigitalOcean, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, a bunch of others, basically every major one out there. And you can also deploy it to your own Ubuntu server. So you can do like a road warrior setup at your own home where you can access it from anywhere. And then lastly, Algo VPN is based on the current version of Ubuntu and Strong Swan, with hardened profiles and everything for that. So basically the technology behind Algo VPN is a piece of software called Ansible. So this is basically a configuration management and deployment tool that uses Python to connect to Unix and Windows system to automatically configure them. So it's basically it's like writing code to deploy software and manage settings and all that. It's listed there if you want to explore more about it, but you don't have to know too much about Ansible. Algo VPN does have their own script to as like an overlay on top of Ansible. Yeah, so basically this is how Ansible works. We have our host definitions, which include all the servers we want to manage or configure. And then we have our playbooks, which is basically all the settings we want configured or all the applications we want installed, all that. And then basically Ansible will connect to all the different machines using SSH. And then we'll run the playbooks on each machine and then configure machine computers that way. Yep, so that's the end of this short presentation. So let's actually try configuring our own VPN. So if you're following along, make sure to go to the GitHub for Algo. They do have steps here, and then you can just copy paste the code if you want as well. Can everyone still see my screen here? Okay. So basically, yeah, you should see GitHub. So first we're going to install all the Algo scripts on our local machine. So if you have Mac or Linux, it should be pretty easy. Algo depends on Python, so we're just going to be creating a Python virtual environment and then installing everything that way. For Windows, they actually recommend installing the Windows subsystem for Linux. If you don't know what that is, it's pretty useful. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. So the first step, you can just follow this directly. You're going to git clone the repository, and then you're going to install the virtual environment package from pip. Then, oh yeah, you might need these different packages on different distributions. And then inside our virtual environment, we're just going to be installing all the required packages that Algo needs. I've already done this. I've already set up my environment here. So you can see I have cloned the entire repository with all the different scripts and all that. And I've installed the requirements as well. So once you have that, we have to actually set up an account. I'll be doing two different ones. I'll be doing one on AWS and one on DigitalOcean. I'll start with the one on DigitalOcean because it is a lot easier. So if you haven't used DigitalOcean before, it's pretty easy. Basically, droplets are your virtual machines. As you see here, I already created one virtual machine. I'm just gonna destroy that now because we don't need that anymore. Okay, and then all we need from DigitalOcean is basically our key, our token, personal access token. So I'm just going to go ahead and generate a new token here. Let's call it Algo2. And you have to make sure the right option is enabled. So Algo can actually go in and create VM for you. Yeah, and then just make sure to copy that key once it's generated, since you can't view it again. So once you've done that, we're just going to go back to the Algo directory, and we're going to just run the first script, which is just called Algo. And it's pretty straightforward. They have like pretty clear directions. You just choose like what provider you want. And name the VPN server, whatever. We'll just keep it default and have it named Algo. Actually, before we do this, I just want to mention there is a configuration file called config. There are some things in here, primarily the users. So this is the list of users that Algo will create. So it'll create 3 profiles for you. You can add or delete as many as you want, but you can also update it after the server is created. You can change the default SSH port, enable disable IPsec. Same thing for WireGuard. Usually you can keep most of these options default, but if you do want some more advanced options, you can just look through here, change whatever. And then you can actually change the default VM settings as well if you wanted to, but we don't need to. Let's just try that again. Okay, this part is important, retaining the PKI prompt. If you do want to add users in the future, you do want to say yes to this. If you don't, you can just say no. Also, there is the DNS ad blocking you can enable. So if you've ever heard of something like Pi-hole or other host-based ad blocking, you can actually enable that and then have like an ad blocking on your VPN connection. So I'm just gonna go ahead and try that. SSH tunneling, I don't know, it's not too common, but you can actually create an SSH tunnel where you can create like a SOCKS proxy to proxy all your web traffic through that SSH tunnel. And then Algo will actually create restricted users for you to do that. And then once you've done all that, it'll actually go in, save all the options. And here it's asking for the API key. Let's see if I still have it. Yeah, someone asked if it installs Pi-hole. It does not install Pi-hole. Basically, it's just gonna you can specify add list inside the configuration file, and then all it's going to do is combine those add lists into the host file, and then just use the host file to add block. It's basically what Pi-hole does, but just for the local machine. And then, yeah, back to here. We have a bunch of different locations you can choose from. We're just going to do one close by. I think San Francisco 1 was not working, so let's just try 3. Yeah, and that's basically it. So the script will actually go into DigitalOcean and create a VM for us. You see here it's provisioning. And then after it does that, it's going to create SSH keys um, it'll use later on to connect and configure the machine afterwards. So yeah, we just have to let that run for a little bit, and then um, yeah, it should be ready in like 5 minutes or so. But as that is running, I guess I can go ahead and show you guys the Amazon, like doing it on Amazon. So there's a couple extra steps because it is AWS. So first thing we have to do is define a policy. Unlike DigitalOcean, there's not like one API key which you can use, which gives Algo access to create stuff. You have to actually define policy. So I think I've already done it. Yeah, right here. If you actually go to their GitHub, they have a page for this. But basically, you're just going to add a policy which will allow access to EC2 and CloudFormation. And then once you've defined that policy, we're going to go back to users, and then we'll create a new user. And then we're actually just going to attach that policy we just created to this Algo user. I'll actually do that again so you can see what happens. So we'll just create a new user called Algo. We'll enable programmatic access. And then we're just going to attach the policy that we defined earlier. We don't need any tags. Yep, and that's basically it. And then just make sure to download this CSV file, which will contain the credentials, which we'll need later on for Algo to connect. Yeah, I can go back to the AWS policy. So basically, policies are defined in IAM. So we're going to go to customer managed policies, which is just under the policies tab. You can see all the default ones. And we're going to be creating our own policy so that we give limited credentials to this Algo user, just to manage EC2 and CloudFormation. So if you actually go to the GitHub, they have this JSON, which you can just copy paste. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, yeah, so they do have a page for all of this, but if you just want the JSON, they have it right here, and you can just copy paste it over. You don't really you don't have to know like what it does. Basically, it's just giving access to EC2 to just create images and also CloudFormation for all the networking and all that. But let's go back to AWS. So once we've defined that policy, we're just going to save it. And then once we create that user, we just attach the policy to that user. And Chris asked if that's the most recent version. I think it is. I don't think AWS really cares. just as long as you define these correctly. So let's look at the progress of our DigitalOcean VM. So you can see right now it's actually, the VM is created. So Algo is actually going in and installing all the card software and hardening the system itself. So actually Algo create a pretty hardened server, which will just be used for VPN. If you actually SSH into it, you'll see you can't really do much else with all the restrictions there are. But this is pretty good because we want a VPN server to be like that. About not collecting logs, I'm not sure. Do you mean like logs on the actual server itself? Yeah, so I'm not really sure how they configure that. I think default there are logs, but the thought is you do own this server. So only you have access if you keep that server key private. So only you should have access to those logs, no one else. Yeah. Yeah, if you wanted to actually look into what it's doing during the deployment, you can just go through the source code. All of these are going to be um, in the roles, and you can just look through the different things. Yeah, as for speed, in my experience, it is really pretty fast. Just depends on the cloud provider's network. For some, such as the node, I think there's different ones based on like what plan you get. Just depends on your provider. But if you do use WireGuard, it is pretty fast. Yeah. And then as for legitimate activities, yeah, I mean, this is your own server. It can actually be traced pretty easily to you because you do have your account. So I wouldn't really recommend doing non-legit activities as much. This is mostly for on the security standpoint. If you do want an encrypted tunnel, which is pretty fast, and you do have control over all your data. Yeah, so this is just an example of what an Ansible like a configuration file is. Searching in YAML. But basically just specifying the different settings. They have a lot of different like built-in um, things for different software, so you can just define it this way, and then you can just see all the different commands that are being run, and yeah. Yeah, so this configuration that we're doing right now is more of the client being like a home mobile device where you're connecting to your outside server. But if you do want to create something where you actually connect to your home network, you can actually deploy Algo to your own Ubuntu machine. that's running on your own network. But you have to set up port forwarding and all that. I think they have a local option. Yeah, right here. So yeah, what you're talking about is like the road warrior setup. So basically all you need is Ubuntu blocks that's running on your home network, and then you just install it to that. So it's not too much that's different. Okay, looks like it is finished. So our VM is all configured, and then all the services are running. And then inside your actual Algo directory, there's a folder called config, which will store all the files that you need to connect. Just take a note of the CA key password, and then the P12 and SSH key passwords, if you do want to actually connect to your machine later on or add new users, things like that. But let's just go ahead and go to the configs directory. So like this one is 143.102. So you can see I did enable the option for SSH tunneling, IPsec, and WireGuard. This SSH configuration is for connecting to the actual machine itself. The SSH tunnel is for SSH tunneling. But let's just actually take a look at the WireGuard folder. So you can see we have 3 different users that we defined in the config file. And then these configurations are actually ones you can import into WireGuard to actually connect to your VPN. So let's just test that out now. I have a VM open. So if you haven't used WireGuard, it's actually really easy. This is all you need for the configuration. Let's just test this out. I think WireGuard should be built in here. I think you do need to copy it over to that directory. Okay, it looks like the connection was successful. You can see that it created a third interface called laptop, and that has this IP, which is also defined in the configuration file. So let's just take a look at what our IP is. Yeah, you can tell it's working because the Google. So looks like our IP is the same as our DigitalOcean VM. So that means all our traffic is being routed through this VM right here. Yeah, and so that's basically it. It's pretty simple. Can you rotate the IPs? I'm not sure. I think it depends on your provider. I haven't actually used DigitalOcean that much, but you might be able to. Yeah, for some reason, I don't think I faced the CAPTCHA in like my AWS configuration. I've only seen it like DigitalOcean. So yeah, if you want, it's actually pretty similar. I don't know if I want to go through the AWS one again. Basically, it's all the same, but you just have a couple different credentials you need, which are in the CSV file. Just your access key and secret key. But basically, it's the same thing. Guess we can just quickly try that. So we'll be using Amazon EC2. You can also use Lightsail if you want. I think EC2 should be easier. Yeah, I'm just gonna remove all these VMs after. One thing I didn't mention before, you actually have the option to enable this connect on demand on macOS and iOS. I'm not really sure what that is, but because I don't really use any iOS devices, but I think it'll create profiles for you to import if you do want that. Okay, so it looks like it's pretty similar to, I think, some of the settings in newer versions of Android, like the always on VPN. So that can be pretty useful, I guess. Okay, so we just need the key ID and secret access key. I don't know if this paste worked. Let's see. It looks like it did. So again, you can choose from a wide variety of locations. You can actually do multiple ones if you want. Um, just depends on how much you want to pay. I think the good thing about this is it's like $5 a month for DigitalOcean or Linode. Amazon, again, if you have one VM, it's just free for a year, but I don't think it's that expensive. You can, if you don't use the free one. So let's just use this West one. I don't think I typed anything. I think I have tried foreign regions before. Um, I just usually do closer ones just because speed's usually is better. But if you want, yeah, there's locations all over the world. Looks like something went wrong. Uh, Probably because the region I created. But yeah, there's not too much different deploying to AWS. Um, so yeah, that's basically all I had. Um, Actually, I'll just show one more thing. If you actually go to that directory and open up the WireGuard folder, they actually provide QR codes so you can like easily import it to your phone. or other devices. Also, if you wanted to use IPsec, let's for like the Apple stuff, all the profiles are here. As for maintaining the servers, I think part of the configuration is enabling auto update, like auto recommended updates. So you should be fine on that end. So yeah, there's not much to maintain. Again, this is mostly for yeah, yeah. This is yeah. It's pretty easy to just deploy. Um, so if something does go wrong, you can just delete and just deploy somewhere else if you wanted to. I think they even say in like their description it's like a throwaway thing. Yeah, but it is all cloud based, so yeah, it's all really easy. So were there any other questions or anything else that you wanted to see? Um, you can either just post it in the chat or Q&A. If not, yeah, the project page is under Trail of Bits. They actually do quite a bit of different things if you want to check them out. But the specific project is called Algo, and you can find all the directions. They have pretty good step-by-step instructions. Um, it's not that hard to do. Actually made it so it's really easy to deploy. Um, yeah, and then again, I'll post the slides probably later today. But if you do want to read more about those two posts about why commercial VPNs aren't the best, you just read through these if you wanted to. Yeah, this was the example of the secret keys from a lot of different providers, and as you can see here, it's not really the most secure. And also, these are shared keys, which really shouldn't be happening. But yeah, I guess that's it for this workshop. Thanks for coming out again. Yeah, go ahead and try creating your own service. If you do have those referral links, I think you should get some free credits, at least on DigitalOcean. I'm not sure about Linode, but go ahead and try that out. Yeah, so yeah, thanks for coming out again. I'll just stick around for a few minutes in case anyone wanted to talk about anything or wanted to see anything more. Yeah, let me actually stop the recording.